Some wrecks, like those of Soviet nuclear submarines abandoned on Russian coasts, are a grave danger for the environment. Others, depolluted, meld peacefully with nature and become shelters for wild animals. Some are deliberately sunk at sea. They create reefs where coral and fish abound and provide an adventure playground for divers. Once sent to its grave or the scrapyard, armament undergoes unexpected metamorphoses which fascinate an ever-growing public. Devotees, lovers of history and of heritage, artists and collectors, and urbexers who delight in exploring abandoned structures are all ardent defenders of these wrecks and military sanctuaries. Upon the sands of Tucson, Texas, many thousands of aircraft of all kinds are gathered in what is said to be the largest plane graveyard in the world. The site was chosen by the American Air Force because of the dry climate, which protects the aircraft from corrosion. Ghostly witnesses to the arms race of the Cold War, many of these aircraft are no more than empty carcasses. All the parts and systems in working order have been removed and reused as spare parts. Then the wreck is depolluted and recycled. Some aircraft are wrapped in protective cocoons for future use, which let's hope will never happen. The military graveyard for warships of Landevennec, off the tip of Brittany, was once very large. Its mayor defends it fervently.
This place has welcomed generations of very different kinds of ship. Sailing ships, then a transition to steamships. Very large ships have been stationed here. The photos are interesting because they show the development of ships, like the shape of the hulls, which has changed a lot. You can see it clearly on this kind of photo.
Since 1910, many ships of the French fleet, battleships, escorts, minesweepers, dropped their last anchor here.
There was a time when the Navy put a lot here. In the 1970s, it was really a graveyard for ships. A graveyard is a place for death, but can also be seen as a place of life. The future of these graveyards is a question which is often raised. We believe in it. It's extremely important to us because the graveyard is a tourist attraction. And the Navy has to have somewhere to put these ships while they're waiting to be broken up. So it's a future which takes into account the questions of our time, and especially environmental questions. The Navy follow this up, which is very reassuring. If the Navy has to close the site, we'll make a modest request to keep the ships so that the graveyard carries on. It's important to us. This is our life.
In the past, demilitarized ships of the Navy were generally used for target practice. Rather than being given up to scrap merchants, the mine-laying submarine Ruby, a Second World War legend, served as a submerged sonar target for a long time. Now it is home to moray eels and bass, conger eels and octopus. Some demilitarized ships, now known as breakwaters, are anchored before ports and structures exposed to the sea to protect them from tides and storm waves.
The Navy currently uses about 10 of these old ships as breakwaters. The aim of a breakwater is to secure the water surface, and for that we rely on big ships that have the capacity, because of their height out of the water, to stop the wind gusting into the port, enough to prevent it causing problems for the ships at anchor there. The Navy is one of only a few navies to use its ships as breakwaters. The usual solution is to build a naval structure, but at the moment there are other priorities.
With the money being spent on international conflict, the use of breakwater ships may continue for a long time.
Behind this plaque is the name of the ship which was covered up during the disarming and securing measures. Ships go, but their name remains. That name belongs to the Navy and our traditions, and to conserve our heritage, we give the names of these ships to other ships in other series. These were the sea-to-sea missile emplacements. It's all been removed. Seagulls are some of the few inhabitants of these ships. The ship can't be left entirely to the seagulls because they leave corrosive droppings on the superstructure. It's one of the factors which limits the time of a breakwater.
From time to time, a solitary dolphin comes to frolic in the calm water sheltered by the dike. The breakwaters and carcasses at the end of their days are towed to Landevennec, where they await their last voyage to the breaker's yard.
We're coming to the site of Landevennec, which is the anchorage point for the Navy, commonly called a graveyard. Nature is left as wild as possible, with ships that came who knows when and will leave who knows when. And silence. The sky meets the sea. You don't know where you are anymore, it's timeless. You can see quite clearly that this ship was used as a breakwater. The sea has developed the corrosion. You can also see that these ships are riding high in the water because of the fact that a large number of elements that were on board have been removed. The turrets, the antennae, parts of the weapons system, and then inside the ship sometimes the motors are removed, all things which could be reused on other ships. See this ship in the state it's in, remembering that it was the flagship of the Mediterranean squadron, is to see how time works on a ship that isn't looked after when there's no longer a crew living aboard.
The Colbert was not just a fine unit. It was also a symbol of the rebirth of the French fleet. It carried General de Gaulle to South America, then to Quebec. And for Madame de Gaulle, a space was even created with an imitation chimney and window.
It was a powerfully armed ship with missiles at the stern, secondary armament on its flanks. A little further to the bow, there were more modern guns. You can still see its radars, aerial image radars, and even with the best will in the world, you couldn't bring it back to life. It's no longer the Colbert.
Seabirds, gulls, seagulls, cormorants and fulmars quickly made the ship into a place that no predator could menace them.
Look, there you can see a nest with two young birds. There's an eggshell and a mass of vegetation, scavengings, things gathered together. So you can see around the nest a large amount of guano, which shows there's a large number of all this wildlife. All these birds on board which have really taken over the ship. This is their home now. Here you can see traces which show how much nature has taken over. A mass of sediment on the bridge and lichens which are taking off. So here we have two models which were used for training crews at the time. And these models stayed on board because when the ship was used as a museum at Bordeaux, there was a desire to have a ship which was in as close as possible a configuration to its active service state. And after 10 years, the economic equation of using it as a museum showed that it wasn't profitable. There weren't enough visitors. The ship went back to anchorage to wait for its eventual scrapping.
Are all military ships condemned to finish at the bottom of the waves or cut up to the last scrap of metal? The Maille-Breze shows that this isn't the inevitable end.
The Maille-Breze should have ended up at Landevennec, like all the ships which have been disarmed by the Navy. Luckily, we got authorization to give it to the port of Nantes as a museum ship. It's classed as a national monument. It's the only military ship in France classed in that category.
To keep the boat alive, the organization rents it as a film location or for performances.
It's by using shapes and colors that the shape of the ship is disguised. We'd like the ship to look as flat as possible from afar.
During the two world wars, military ships used camouflage, which altered the shapes of the ships and made it difficult for gunners to range in on their targets.
The principle was to modify the perception of the ship, to modify its structure, create optical effects when seen through a periscope which largely distorted the silhouette of the ship.
While the reconversion of the Maille-Breze has been a success, that of the Colbert ended in failure, doubtless because it was much bigger and looking after it was too expensive.
The paint flakes off in a very timeless way, very artistically. With graphic effects, you'd have difficulty achieving deliberately. We've got real still lifes, in a particular style, still lifes of ships. It's quite remarkable.
The carcasses waiting at Landevennec have inspired Paul Bloas, a painter from Brest who makes his art in abandoned places.
Talking aesthetically, for me, the Landevennec graveyard has a particularly strong atmosphere, extremely ghost-like. Ruins always stimulate the imaginary. Everyone sees in them their own fantasies, their own visions, and I bring my own visions, which are images that are stuck on. There was a time that military prisoners, especially sailors, were held on floating prisons, that is, on military ships. And what I've done at Landevennec is a reference to that. We're dealing with objects of force. There's a kind of fascination with objects which bring death. A ship which has become an empty vessel. A military ship is somehow a kind of dragon which has fallen. On all these ships, there are signs forbidding access because they are very dangerous wrecks. The rust is razor sharp. I asked permission from the Navy, who refused. I asked the minister directly, who refused as well. I said to myself that I didn't have a choice. I had to go aboard these ships despite it being forbidden. And fair enough, the Navy lodged a complaint about me. I got a warning.